doggy. My name is Gunner, and I play in a local Austin band called The Big Gun Show. This is the very first, the premiere episode of the My Top 5 Records podcast. I've started this podcast to sit down with other songwriters, musicians, artists, and lovers of music, just to talk about their top 5 records that have inspired them, their musical tastes, and their lives. Everyone's got a reason why they pick their top 5, and often they're different. It might be because they influenced their lives or their music. It might be because they take them back to memorable times in their lives. Or heck, it might even describe a smell or a taste when they first heard it. Tonight I'm rapping with Jeff Blankenhorn, a.k.a. The Plank. I think he might be the best multi-instrumentalist in Austin. And if you've never seen him play dobro or guitar or any other stringed instrument, get out there. He is epic. Plank co-hosted Sun Radio's Texas Radio Live show on Wednesday night at Guero's. I brought down my mobile setup, and we thought we could use the back room at Guero's, but they had a big party back there, so we had to go on down and find some place quiet like Joe's Coffee. Well, it wasn't that quiet. You're going to hear some stuff in the background, some cars, maybe a motorcycle, maybe some tables being shuffled around, but that's okay because the conversation, it's incredible. Now close your eyes. You've been locked up for 10 years. What 5 records do you have? All right, Jeff, let's talk.
Okay.
Mr. Plank.
Mr. Plank. I haven't heard Mr. Plank. I get a lot of Plank.
Dr.
Plankenstein. Dr.
Yes.
Plankenstein happens once a year.
Now, I know your top 5 records. You've told me these, and I was impressed. The fact that I said, hey, this is going to be really difficult for you to pick your top 5 records.
It wasn't hard.
And you came back within like 5 seconds with all of them.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. I did have to shuffle between a couple, but the first 4 were really, really, really easy.
Well, so I would think that the ones that I heard that you said were, what was it, Jimi Hendrix, Axis Bold as Love.
Yeah.
What are the other 4? I know that
Townes Van Zandt Live at the Old Quarter, the double album.
Killer.
Yeah. There is
the best of Sacred Steel, which I can't wait to talk about.
Okay, good. Of course,
Patty Griffin.
Yeah, Living with Ghosts.
Which blew me away.
The famous Patty Griffin album, and the one that really, really got me hooked, that some people got me into. And then, of course, probably the one that is number one why I play music at all, which is Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder.
Wow. Okay, well, let's start talking about that.
Sure.
Why?
Okay, it came out in 1976. I was born in 1973, and we had a Marantz stereo in our living room.
Yeah.
And before my home sort of became a broken home, I was 4, and we had a pretty hefty record collection. Thank you. Thanks so much. We had a pretty hefty record collection, and I would hear over and over on the radio the song Sir Duke, which is the Stevie Wonder song from Songs in the Key of Life. And it was the first song I really knew all the words to, but I didn't know what they meant or who they were talking about. I didn't know Satchmo, like when he says, "There's Basie Miller, Satchmo, and the King of all Sir Duke." Wow. You know, and it just, and then the whole thing also too was the song said, "You can feel it all over, you can feel it all over, people."
Yeah.
I felt like one of those people. I feel like, much like Willie Nelson, you know, even though I'm originally from the Midwest, and up there, people will say, "Oh, I don't like country music, but I like Willie Nelson."
Right.
And I'm like, well, then you like country music.
He is country
You like
music.
country music, you know. But they have this different idea of what that might entail. I think the same thing is true. It's very, very hard not to like Willie Nelson. It's very, very hard not to like Stevie Wonder. Everybody has a seat at the table in a Stevie Wonder song. Everyone.
Got a great Stevie Wonder story.
I'm ready for it.
So I was up in Colorado. My friends came up. They got this little town, and so this guy told us that we had to go to this graveyard to go see this this little girl get out of her grave and go run around, and you could hear her screaming. And we said, bullshit, that's not going to happen.
Well, and you wait a second, and you went?
Not only did we went
How
back to
young
our
were you?
we
How
went back
young
to
were
our
you?
campsite. And we ate mushrooms and we drank
Okay.
tequila
Now it's starting
and
to make
beer,
sense.
And we drove there listening to Thin Lizzy and Stevie Wonder's Sir Duke.
Oh yeah, Sir
So
Duke.
that's my Sir Duke story.
No kidding.
Yes.
Oh, see, I mean, that's
and
the thing.
when we went across the bridge to get into the guy that took us there that day, there were 2 sticks that we had tried to prop the gate up with in a cross. And so we were like, oh, and so, yeah. Anyway, so that's my story. But
Well,
please,
I think that
proceed.
no, it's okay. I think most people have. It's your show, but I think most people have like this sort of Stevie Wonder soundtrack of their lives and don't notice. There's a lot of people who didn't dig Tom Petty, as in like went out and bought a lot of records, but they know so many of the songs, and they know that whether they like it or not, it's the soundtrack to their life. Now, for me, I heard it, and it was infectious.
Right.
And I hadn't started singing in church yet. I started singing in church literally when I was 7. I was a boy soprano. And so I would sing in church and stuff like that. Like before I could read music, the choir director would just move her hand up and down. Like you have to go high on the next note, you have to go low on the next note.
Right.
And by the time I was 10, I was singing national anthem at Cleveland Indians game every once in a while and stuff like that. Like I was a boy soprano, like freak of nature, weird kid. My voice changed when I started playing guitar, but all through every type of phase I have ever been in my life, I constantly go back to Stevie Wonder because there's just something about the way it makes me feel. There's something about the fact that you have to move, when you listen to it.
There's that
soul is absolutely the word, but
and you've got a lot of that in your music. I mean,
it's nice
I
to
can
hear.
feel it and I can hear it. I aspire to that.
Oh, thanks, man. With Stevie, it just never ever changed. It's so bad that my beautiful and extremely patient Canadian wife, like I can't listen to. If we're on a road trip, I can only listen to Stevie for so long because she knows I just turn into a little kid. I mean, I start singing along.
Talk to me about you turning. I want to see this.
When I turn
need to
into
feel
a little
this.
kid, I can't stop singing along. It makes me really, really, really happy. If it's sad, I'm crying. If it's happy, I'm in there. If it's deep, I'm feeling it. If it's just music, sometimes that's even the best. And there are not a lot of people who. And then I got older, I started finding out all these things about him, and sometimes you find out about your heroes and you don't like it. I found out about my one big hero and was like, this is incredible. He was everything that I thought he was. He was playing all the instruments on the album. I always loved the fact that he could play all the instruments. He could play horns, he could play bass, he could play
I didn't
drums.
know that.
But here's the great thing, he never played guitar. The one thing that he wouldn't
That's why I
touch...
needed you.
And it was weird. It was like, this guy, how do I found that out like maybe in my teen or 18, 19. He didn't play them on everything, but he could, and there were certain tracks where he did. Plus that chromatic harmonica, man, is just so soulful and so beautiful.
And
it's a perfect lead. And
if anybody doesn't like Stevie Wonder, there's a problem.
well, I feel like they're missing out, or they like him and they don't realize they like him. Like, I remember joking about it with somebody like Jimmy LaFave. I was like, the late Jimmy LaFave. I was like, because people would say, well, who's your favorite this? And they go, oh, you can't say that. And I'd go, yeah, it's kind of easy for me.
Yeah.
Like, I can just
Well, it was
easily
very
say
obvious to
Stevie
me.
Wonder. It's just Stevie Wonder is my favorite of
So,
everything.
What I'd like to say now is that one of your albums is the best of Sacred Steel. And
Yeah.
it's
One of
the
my top fives.
Best ofs are not typically what I would
No,
consider.
no, but the reason I
because-
have to do
and
that...
I want to hear this.
Yeah, the reason I have to do that is because, okay, so for a little bit of backstory, Sacred Steel is sacred music.
Yes, it is.
It is from the House of God and Keith Dominion and these churches that were in Rochester, New York, and down in Florida, and the main instrument in these African American churches was the steel guitar. And for a long time, if you left and you played secular music, you would not be let back in to play sacred music because it was meant to be only for that. And there's a lot of people that I looked up to as pioneers of this instrument because they don't just play steel guitar, man. They play steel guitar with like pedal steel with distortion and wah-wah, and it's screaming and it's vocal and it's just so, that's the lead instrument in the band. And as I was growing up and learning how to play dobro and bluegrass bands, which is another type of steel guitar, the one that has the hubcap in it, and learning how to play, I never thought I'd learn pedal steel, but Willis Allen Ramsey asked me to try his, and I borrowed his. And when I was playing with him, he was like, why don't you just sit down? And oh, God, now I got to learn how to play this thing. And
oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no, now you get to play
but I was terrified.
15 instruments.
Terrified. Yeah, and especially that one.
By the way, that's one of my top 5 albums.
Which one?
Willis Allen Ramsey.
Yeah, and I could easily put that on there. Yeah,
it's just, by the way, everybody that's listening, the only reason you're hearing that is because we're having to do this remote.
Yes.
And
we're doing it remote.
Joe's Coffee House right after Jeff did his.
I was co-hosting a radio program that I do every once in a while. That's a really cool thing for me to do. One time David Arnsberger asked me to come down and co-host because he was like, we get musicians every once in a while. And apparently David really liked it because I would ask musical questions of the guests.
Just like you did tonight.
Like I did tonight with Seth James was killing it tonight.
He
with
was
his band.
awesome. He was killer.
But the people at Sun Radio loved it because I would kind of give David a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And I would mess with him. And
easy.
he wanted it, and he was fine with it too. So we got pretty funny on the air. So now I hardly ever do it because I'm not around as much. I'm touring now.
Right.
But if I get a chance, I come and I do it.
I think it's
Tonight
awesome.
was perfect.
I think it's, yes, it was. Beautiful night. But back to what we were talking about.
Sacred Steel.
I love the fact, I looked into it.
Yeah.
And it's like 1930s, the woman that started the Church of God, she died, then it split into 3 sections.
That's exactly right.
And then basically what happened was that 2 of them took up the steel guitar.
You have done your homework, sir.
I'm trying to do my homework because that's what I'm supposed to do, right?
Isn't it crazy when you hear this for the first time? You're like, I've never heard this music. I'll tell you how I found it.
Please.
Okay, this is anybody who knows me knows that I love the joke about name dropping. You used to always say it like this: when you name drop, you're trying to make yourself appear one rung higher on the entertainment ladder, leaned against the wall of illusion and broken dreams. In fact, I was talking about that with Ray Wiley the other day. And he agrees with me that name dropping is a horrible, horrible, disgusting, So you just do what you got to do. So I'm playing a folk festival called the Kate Wolf Festival in California with Ray Wiley, and there's a band playing after us.
You playing with him?
Yeah.
You playing?
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm playing dobro for him, and it's like me and him and a dobro player. And a fiddle player named Eamon McLaughlin who plays with Rodney Crowell now. And, so the 3 of us go out there, and we're playing like a midday set. And Ray says, this steel player's going to sit in with us. And I was like, oh, okay. He asked to sit in with us. So this is Chuck Campbell from the Campbell Brothers.
Yeah.
And apparently,
I heard that. I heard those guys.
Apparently the Campbell Brothers are playing after us. So all my life, I was always kind of like, if I could figure out a way, because everybody wanted me to play dobro in rock bands.
Right.
And I could never get it loud enough, it just sounded stupid. So I had gone to a luthier and said, why don't you make me something that's like a bunch of electric guitar parts, but it's in the body of a dobro. There's no hubcap, and I won't have to worry about anything. I can use all my pedals. And so Tony Nobles built one. That was the first Plank guitar that's named after me. And
awesome.
That was me trying to create something that they were already doing for years. They were already doing it, but they were doing it with lap steels and pedal steels. So I was already trying to bridge this in my head, and then all of a sudden I heard them, and I was like,
that's what you want.
That's what I'm trying to do, and nobody gets it when I explain it to them.
Right.
But they're already doing it, but they're doing it with church music.
And that's because when I first listened to that album, I was like, okay, this is super gospel, but it's super Plank. Like,
that's really cool.
I heard all of.
You can hear the influence.
Yes, that was the first thing I thought. Those were the 2 things. Actually, I thought influence first,
sure,
and then Plank influence.
Yeah, well, I mean, really, man, it
But
was
it's-
huge how it changed my life, because after we played, the Campbell brothers played, there was no bass guitar. There were 2 steel guitars. One of the steel guitar brothers in the Campbell brothers would thump the bass, and it sounded like a Fender bass, and he'd go boom, 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 boom on one of the steels. And the other one was just wailing with a wah-wah and distortion and
It's swamp back and forth.
yeah, and then that led me to Robert Randolph before Robert Randolph had gotten into the world of secular music. He was in that church, and he left that church to go do secular stuff. Now, the story that I have been told now is that a lot of them go out and do secular stuff. It's been okayed by certain churches, not okay by other churches. It just depends. But it's absolutely fascinating to me. I've never been to a service, but much like, I would sit in at Mount Zion with my buddy Yogi, over here in East Austin, and there's music from the beginning in the African-American tradition of this type of church. From the beginning of the sermon to the end, the music doesn't stop. And that's the same thing. It's like when the preacher starts doing a sermon, there's organ behind it, and they're looking at me like, play. And I'm like, well, play
He's
what?
talking.
And they're like, no, play.
Yeah.
Just keep playing, And I just, how can you not be influenced by that? So many songs also from those, you can go directly from certain songs and go, well, that kind of sounds like the beat to Homecoming, and that kind of sounds like the tone I wanted to get on Trouble Find Me, and then on Heaven on Earth, that sounds like that same shuffle beat from this Glenn Lee tune or from this Aubrey Gent tune or stuff like that. It just blew me away and changed my life.
I mean, I was raised a Methodist child, and the music was
Oh yeah, that's what I sang in church first.
But I mean, when I think about if I had to grow up, and
you had a choice.
If I had a choice, and I grew up, and so I would want to grow up and
African
something that's got
American
some
church.
soul.
Yeah.
Yes, that's like the Blues Brothers. I mean, a lot of this stuff sounds like the Blues Brothers.
Well, it does, and that's why
that scene from the Blues Brothers.
That's why that satire was so funny.
It was
because they were kind of making fun. I know a lot of blues people who really hate the movie The Blues Brothers, but the reason being is that it makes fun of the blues, or it makes fun of white guys doing the blues, or it makes fun of this. And like the way I always saw it was, these guys who just didn't had it because they thought that they had it.
right.
I'm down
with
these
that.
incredible comics, and then, I mean, it's undeniable the rest of the music in that is beyond good. From John Lee Hooker to Aretha Franklin to James Brown
all
to whoever.
the people they had in that movie. I mean,
And the band.
Blues Brothers. Come on.
The band was sick. Anyway, not to go too off on the Blues Brothers, for me, it's just like, I think that musicians learn at a very, very early age that diversity is a good thing, and that it just happens musically. Like, we don't care who you are or where you come from if you can play or you can sing. And we learn that lesson, so it makes it a lot easier for us. I think that a lot of the division that's in this world and going on right now is because people don't sit down at the table in front of each other like we are right now. It's very hard to hate somebody when you're sitting down at the table with them. Well, when we get together and play music,
Nobody's hating each other.
we're there. Yeah,
Or
you at
white
least
doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Now, at the same time, it is very, very good to honor traditions, and it's good to know where things come from, and it's good to try your best not to turn into, say, I hate to use the word like cultural appropriation has a lot of meanings these days.
Okay.
But I cannot help be influenced by things. There's a
right.
difference between being influenced and just like ripping it off. And I think if you're wise and you're caring and you understand a little bit about the history of anything, and if you even just try to know the history of the type of music that you're getting into, then you probably have a little bit better chance of not being a poser. Hopefully.
Agreed.
And no choice, because if I like the music, it's gonna seep in there. Whether I don't know. Yeah, I don't have any choice.
Yeah. All right. Other albums. What was the
Pick
other one?
Towns, Patty.
Patty. Let's talk about Patty because I've never really been a fan of Patty Griffith.
Gotcha. That's a challenge accepted.
And you picked that, and I was like, okay. And so then I did my research, and I looked into it.
Before you listened?
No, actually, while I was listening.
Good.
And they basically said that she had kicked ass, and I forget, some record company, I forget who it was. Do you know?
I don't know which one, but I know the story.
But yeah, and so they said, hey, listen, this is overproduced, and so was it Niles came in and said, okay, we're just going to do it with you, but we're going to break it down way down.
Yeah. And they broke it down to the point where the album is her and a guitar.
Almost. There's other stuff
There's
in there.
one guitar on Time Will Do the Talking that's a high-strung guitar.
I thought there was some bass in there, too.
I don't think so, man. I'm pretty sure that the
I listened to
entire
it with
album...
my headphones on.
All right.
Well, so I could be wrong.
I think that on Time Will Do the Talking, there's a high-strung Nashville-tuned guitar just kind of strumming.
But I also thought about it, and I was like, oh my, this is like incredible, because she's got this like Alanis Morissette deal, and she's also somebody else. But Alanis came out with hers the year before, and I was like, I thought that it would be the other way around. Anyway, your thoughts?
Okay, well, it's pretty easy for me. So, at the urging of Ray Wiley Hubbard, we always go back to him a little bit. I moved to Texas, and I drive to Texas I've been living in Nashville before that, Ann Arbor, and I had a Geo Prism and $100 and a couple of guitars. And I drove straight to Ray's house, and I lived with Ray and Judy and Lucas. Lucas was like 6. Now he plays guitar for Ray, and he just got married.
I didn't know he got married.
Yeah, it was just a couple weekends ago. It was a great wedding. Anyway, we're driving back from Austin to Wimberley in the time where I'm still living with him. And I don't know if it's a Segway City is on KUT or what, if it's a Larry Monroe program, but I swear in that one sitting, I heard McMurtry, Bob's Lonely Land album, Bob Schneider, back when he had Bruton and everybody in it. That. Great record. And I remember asking him about James McMurtry and going, what is this? And I remember asking him about Bob, going, I ended up playing with Bob. And then Patty came on, and it was the song Every Little Bit.
Oh, come on, dude. That's the one.
Did not say a word. He just goes, well, this is Patty. And I said, okay. And then, I was just stopped dead in my tracks. Her with a guitar, her voice. And I didn't even talk very much after the song was done because I was so freaked out and blown away. Now, Ray had her sing some backups on his album.
Right.
And she was starting to get, she happened to be dating a friend of mine at that time, and she was living with him, and she was just...
Is that Robert Plant?
No. Just that's funny. This is a long time ago, and I don't know exactly when Living with Ghosts came out, but I knew that it was being played...
86, I think.
What's that?
86, I think. Was it 96?
Yeah, that sounds more like it. It was still getting so much play in Austin, I could hear it almost every day before I owned it.
I still hear it today.
Yeah. And Every Little Bit was just like, I couldn't believe the lyrics. I couldn't believe her instrument. There are only a few people that I have been next to, like physically, like you and I are right now, whose instrument ever freaked me out. I know a lot of people with great voices.
Is she a good guitar player?
She's a really, really, really great self-accompanist. And she sounds like Patty. She doesn't sound like anybody else beating the soup out of it.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what you want, you know. I'm kind of from the school of, I love what Gerf Morlick said once. He said, someone who's technically good is not good. Because if you have to say that, and he didn't even say anything else, but his point, the way I took his point was, if you have to say they're technically good, then you're talking about the fact that they can play fast. Who cares? It's like, does it hit you musically? I like to think like a child when I listen.
Good, because I believe the same thing. I don't believe that people say that Jimi Hendrix is the best guitarist of all time, whatever, or somebody else. I believe that Keith is, because the way that he feels and the riffs that he kicks out. That's
fair enough.
That's for me, but I'm not an accomplished guitarist like you are.
Well, and what the hell do we know anyway? Another thing I'll tell you, right? Yeah, what the hell, another thing that I really love is, I enjoy advice. I enjoy musical compliments. I enjoy stuff way more when it comes from somebody who doesn't play for a living. Because they're just going to tell me whether they dig it or not, or it hit me, or that song means so much to me, or I loved your solo. They're not going to go, why'd you use a diminished 7 chord there? Because who gives a crap? I'd much rather listen.
I love that you say that.
I don't want to listen to, and my friends, like, I tell them, I want to listen like a child. Like Pablo said, Picasso says,
I want to feel it.
Well, he said, it took me my whole life to learn how to draw like a child again. I'm misquoting it.
That's fine.
But isn't that beautiful? It's taking me my whole life to learn how to listen like a child again. And that's what I want. I want to enjoy music and not go to a show and think, oh man, he doesn't have enough monitor.
Or
who gives it, right? I ruined it for my wife one time, man. My wife comes back from a show and she has, this just killed me. It makes me like always want to take her to shows where I don't know the band and it's something that she loves and just zip my mouth shut. Because she has a friend come down, she's from Vancouver Island in Canada.
Okay.
Friend comes down, never been to Austin. They go to Antone's, they go see a band. I'll leave the band nameless. My wife's friend has the time of her life. She goes out, she's on cloud 9. She can't believe how amazing it is. My wife gets home, I'm already in bed. And she goes, you ruined me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, my friend had the time of her life, and I'm sitting there going, the Barry sax player is so mad right now. They're phoning in this gig. They're totally phoning in this gig. She's like, I kept looking at the sound guy like, look at him, and I'm like, baby, I'm so sorry. The curtain has been pulled back, and she sees the man behind the curtain. All of that.
The Wizard.
Yeah,
Oz.
yeah. So I feel for her in that, because she has such a love for music and she doesn't do it for a living. She's a horticulturalist and a gardener. And I just don't want to ruin music any more than I already have for her,
Yeah, but I get what you're saying.
I like, hopefully soul, But Jimi Hendrix is on my list.
Let's talk about Jimi Hendrix because my wife she has bought two Jimi Hendrix paintings that live in my house. I am not the biggest Jimi Hendrix fan, and I'd like to hear why he is your...
Why I am. When my voice started to change...
At what age?
A little over 10.
Okay.
And I started to get a little crack in the voice. I was no longer hitting the boy soprano notes. My big brother was a very accomplished musician, and I was always John's little brother who also plays guitar. Like, oh, you're John's little brother? You
Right.
play too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So he gave me a lot of... I was always 5 years up on all my friends.
Right.
So my brother was 15. He was listening to Hendrix. He was listening to the White Album. He was listening to everything. We shared a room. So I listened to all that. So all that stuff, and all I wanted, my dad wasn't around. So my father figure was my brother. I wanted him to think I was cool. He knew I could sing. He was playing bass. I'm going to pick up guitar. So I pick up guitar, and I start beating the soup out of it like crazy with a cassette tape to Are You Experienced?
That was the one. That was the one.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I didn't choose that as my album because as I got older, I love that album. But I really feel like for a studio album, Axis Bold as Love, the song content, the crazy, crazy, wild, the stuff they could do with a 4-track, we can't do today with freaking Pro Tools and Logic.
Does it have anything to do with it was an album?
Yeah.
And there's multiple sides to it?
The two sides, man, everything for me when I started was, I was just on the cusp of vinyl being it, and we were starting to listen to cassettes.
Right.
There was a minor thing where people were doing 8 tracks, same age-ish. And it was a big deal because listening to a record and trying to figure out a guitar lick is difficult.
It is.
It got a lot easier instead of moving the arm back. We had it easier. We talk about people having YouTube now, and everything you want to learn is there.
Yep.
it was easier for me than it was for my brother because I could rewind the tape. Hit a lick, rewind the tape, try it again, play along with it. Hit the tape, rewind again, play along with it. Are you experienced? Every single song is slightly pitched different. So it drove me nuts. I'd have to, if I wanted to play through beginning to end, Are You Experienced? And I could, then I would have to retune my guitar in between every song and stop the tape. But I kind of found when I started learning about it that the one thing about Jimi Hendrix, whether you are a Keith guy or whoever, and it's interesting because you make a good point to me. I don't think anybody who came after Hendrix wasn't influenced by him, whether they like it or not. Because you can't say Clapton wasn't, because everything changed when Clapton heard him. You can't say Pete wasn't. Everything changed.
Okay.
You know. Now, the interesting thing that I haven't thought of, didn't really change Keith's playing that much. Keith was a groove guy. He still played
slashy, sloppy.
Yeah, jangly. Yeah, you know. And so this isn't why it's my, whether or not I think that he's whatever, the greatest of all time. I don't like things like that anyway. Who gives a whatever, right? But if I had to like sit and listen to an album, if I only had 5 albums, Desert Island, Go to Jail, whatever, right? You know, I got 5 albums to take. Yeah, I like Go to Jail too. So if I end up in jail, knock wood, that I don't.
Probably will.
Yeah, well, maybe in this political atmosphere. But the Axis Bold as Love is that because the same kind of feeling that I would get listening to a Stevie Wonder album or listening to a Patty Griffin song is like this bubbling up in my chest of emotion when I hear a lyric put in song that affects me in a certain way. And all of those things happen with Axis Bold as Love, with happen with Wait Until Tomorrow, that happen with the songs, on that album. And same thing for Songs in the Key of Life. They hit me, and I just
is it a lyric?
Emotional, both.
Is it a lyric or is it a groove or
I mean with
a style or
with I remember getting to the end of Axis, and it just hits this big bam. Anger, he smiles, frowning in shiny metallic purple armor. Green, jealousy waits behind him.
You hear it.
Her fiery green down stares at the grassy ground, or something like that. Blue, all of the life-giving waters taken for granted. They quietly understand. Once happy turquoise till love.
Clearly, you've never heard this.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And those words, who knows what the crap they mean? I don't know what they mean. I know what they mean to me.
And
which was
all
also
that matters, really.
and that was a great teaching lesson too. It was just like, don't tell them too much, because then you're going to take away what it meant for them.
I love it. All right, now I want to wrap this up a little bit right now.
Yeah, sure. We still haven't talked about towns.
Well, I know we haven't, but maybe we're going to have to do a different episode.
Oh, okay, because we're almost there?
Yes. But I do want to hear, actually I want to talk really quick about your music.
Okay.
So you've got this new single out that is so like fucking it's dirty, it's evil. It's not evil, but it's groovy. It's like True Blood-ish.
Oh no, that's really cool. Is that the okay? So I've put out.
What's the newest one?
Newest one's called Shadow of Doubt.
That's the one.
No, I didn't write that.
I don't care.
And it doesn't matter because I'm doing this project right now like this. My Soul Slide album 2 albums ago was the one that kind of got my solo career started. All I was doing was playing with other people, and then that album kind of took me into a solo career.
Good.
My Sleeping Dogs album, now I have a solo career, and I don't play with anybody.
And by the way, I love that album.
Thank you.
I love it. It's incredible.
Man, thanks.
Just honest feedback.
Thank you. The thing is, in promoting each album, the Soul Slide album, they were like, "You are blues. You're not promoting Americana. You are a blues man." And I was like, "Look at me. I'm not a blues man." I was like, "If you want to put it to blues radio, fine." I was like, "But I have all these Americana people that like me." Okay, so they don't. I get it on like 700 stations around the country. They're playing it. I get in these magazines. It's really cool. This is on Soul Slide. But then all the people in Texas that liked me anyway, well, they played it on their Americana stations. They played Trouble Find Me. and a lot. So then I go to make another record, and it just so happens that we go in the studio the day Tom Petty dies. It just changed everything. It just changed the direction of my album and made it, well, I mean, I wasn't planning on making a roots rock Americana album. I wanted to go in and make a Jeff Blankenhorn wishes he was the Alabama Shakes with one guy playing steel guitar. That was my vision. None of that happened. Tom Petty died. We went in the studio that morning. We're talking about it, and all of a sudden, we start thinking about all these things and these roots rock things that, whether I liked it or not, were huge influences on me. I don't think there's anything on it that sounds like Tom Petty, but we would joke about things like that we would know that he said, like, don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Right.
You know, and like, what would Mike Campbell do on this solo? Oh, he'd play a lot less. He'd play a couple of notes and it'd be perfect, so you know, right? Yeah. So, okay, so those two records. Now, here's the thing. That record, they were like, you're country.
No, you
can't
do that.
And I said to him, I was like, we got to have something for outlaw country. I said, look at me. Do I look like outlaw country to you? I'm not a blues man. I'm not outlaw country. I'm just Jeff, whatever, you know. So it's your job to figure out where it goes. I said, what about all these people that listen to me on blues radio? They're going to like certain songs that are on this record. And they were like, nope. I was talking to Kevin Connor about this before the show tonight. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, you spend all this money on a publicist and they ignore half of your audience because they're in a different genre.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that's stupid. So basically, I got this, I've been through managers and booking agents and all this stuff because I'm just not happy until I find somebody I can really work with.
Okay.
And I found this young man, 20 years younger than me, who got it. And in the last year and a half, my career has become a thing where I may not be a household name, but I got a great audience that really likes my music.
And that's what I love about you,
I don't
Jeff.
care, man.
The thing I've mentioned, hey, I'm doing a podcast with Jeff Blankenhorn. You know who he is? And they're like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you. Anyway, bottom line is that it's been really good talking to you today.
Thanks.
Tonight, I guess we're going to call it.
You just didn't know I was going to talk so much.
No, but it's awesome, and I think we still haven't even talked about two of your albums. Yes, you may. But I just want to know, and everybody else to know where they can find you.
Well, let me
on
just.
the web.
Well, basically all the new singles are out on Spotify and on Apple Music and all those things. And I have a jeffblankenhorn.com. It's just like it sounds. All the places where you're supposed to find me, that's where they are. I wanted to put out an album. I wanted to put out stuff that I didn't have to worry about genres. And Shadow of Doubt, it's called Covered and Uncovered because covered is the songs that I'm doing all my own songs now, so I don't usually get to put out covers.
Right.
So I put the covered songs. One's a Neil Young song.
That's brilliant.
One is my friend Gary Nicholson from Nashville has written a lot of songs. And the other two are originals. And so it's Covered and Uncovered Volume 1. And that's it's basically all the songs are out now on Spotify, but they'll come out on CD and vinyl next month at the 13th at the Townsend in Austin.
What's the date on that again?
December 13th at the Townsend. It's going to be a conversation. I'm going to have Kevin Connor from Sun Radio MC. I'm going to bring in the artist that did all the artwork for each song. I'm going to bring in my producer, Gabe Rhodes. And not only are we going to play, but we're going to talk about all of that.
I love it. Anything else you want to say to your fans?
Oh, gosh. Who are you? And when can I come and play for you?
Are you sexy?
No. More like man. I'll tell you what. I try really, really hard to be grateful that I get to do this for a living. That's it, man. When I first moved to Texas, this will be the last thing because it's really great. Ray Wiley sat me down and he said, Jeff, what do you want to do when you move to Texas? And I said, play music with people that I love and be okay and survive.
Beautiful.
And he said, do you want a Jaguar in your driveway? And I said, not necessarily. And he goes, well, you can do it.
My favorite story about Ray Wiley Hubbard that he told me, and I said, yeah, I've got this great harmonica player that he plays with me. He said, well, make sure he's a smoker. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, make sure he's a smoker. I said, well, I don't understand what you're saying. He said, make sure you don't want him playing the whole time. And that's what It's not so beautiful. All right, well, thank you, Jeff,
for
coming and doing this. This was a blast.
Next time we'll talk about Towns.
Yes, and the other records that you have.
Perfect.
All right, thanks, guys. I love having people on the show like Blank. I not only get to hear their take on music, but also the other people that they know, the things that they've said to them, and how they've influenced them. Plank's got quite a few of those stories, and I just love them. And again, my apologies for the sound quality. I heard someone once say the best microphone you have is only the one that you have with you. Nonetheless, if you've got the gumption, please head over to thebiggunshow.com. That's thebiggunshow.com. And check out what we're up to these days. You can also catch us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all with the handle of The Big Gun Show Band. The Big Gun Show Band. I'll be back in 2 weeks, and then every other week after that, close your eyes. You're back on that desert island again. What 5 records do you have? Until next time.